put some monies in there for that. Capital allocations, you've seen this slide before, and it's now finalized for 2010-11, and, well, in fact, for 11-12. So without that override that we tried to pass, here's what we're looking at. And this slide does not include carry forward balances, so we do have some carry forward balances in unrestricted capital anyway, not so much in soft capital anymore. But our allocation is about $775,000, and below that are all the things that we would like to do with that money or that we would typically do. So we typically buy $325,000 worth of consumable materials to support our curriculum. An adoption of one subject, K-8 district-wide, costs between $800,000 and $1.2 million. Technology, between replacing obsolete equipment, renewing the software that we use district-wide, both academic and administrative, $725,000. We have a copier lease that costs us $63,000. We put out $125,000 to the schools to allow them to replace textbooks, buy microscopes and things like that support curriculum. Thankfully, to keep our buildings new, we have a bond program, so that would be exacerbated significantly if we didn't have that going, so we can still take care of our buildings to some extent with that. And furniture and equipment, I don't know, that'll in all likelihood be the odd man out. So in a more global sense, looking forward, what's out there, what variables are out there. We read in the paper every day that the economy is incrementally improving, so don't really know what that means. Government typically is the last one to feel a recession and the last to come out of it. The 1% sales tax that was voted in, which provides about $1 billion, I believe 2/3 of that's K-8 and the other third is for health services. We're in year 2 of 3. So at the end of 12-13, we could be looking at replacing that money.
Scott,
if the state doesn't.
I'm sorry, excuse me. On that money, have you received basically, how much have we received from the sales tax?
We don't get that money specifically. It's not separated. The state, in theory, would have cut an additional $1 billion had that not passed. That goes into the general fund.
So basically, it's just a replacement of something they would have cut.
Yeah, and when it expires,
They're going to cut even
the
more.
state will be looking for $1 billion in savings somewhere, not necessarily K-12 education, but somewhere.
Okay.
So it's not automatic that it would come to us. State level of debt, as you recall, the state sold and leased back some of its buildings and did some rollovers, meaning the payment that they should have made to Creighton in June was pushed to July so that their year end would be healthier. Well, they've now done that with several months, and that's going to be a problem for them when the economy does rebound and they get some additional revenues. A good portion of the legislature is going to want to fix that before any new spending goes out to anybody at all, really. The debt limit refers to our bonding capacity. As you recall, we have sold $22 million of our $44 million authorization for bonds. Our debt level is determined by our secondary assessed valuation. That's part of the formula. So when we started down that road, we were fine, and then our secondary assessed valuation dropped 30% in one day, when the new figures were put in. So we do not have the debt capacity to sell $22 million worth of bonds. A bill was passed to provide relief for that last summer. It was poorly worded and challenged and failed that test. So I know there's some will to rewrite that, but I don't know. Maybe you know more about that, but it's unknown whether that's going to come back or not.
So that means that currently we had planned, the bond passed was a $44 million bond. We sold $22 million, and then we were going to sell $22 million again at some point. So is that second 22 million now on hold? Is it gonna be a smaller amount?
It's on hold. At this moment, we could sell about $2.5 million worth of bonds and be at our capacity. Next summer, we'll make a payment on the bonds we've already issued of about $4 million. That will bring our available capacity up to about $6.5 million. So without the passage of new legislation, we could sell a small amount of bonds and continue smaller projects.
But it would not be enough to build a school.
Yeah.
And would not, even by the the bond is a 7 year, is that 5 year, 7 year?
You have 6 years to sell, and upon selling, you have 3 years to substantially commit.
Okay. Thanks.
The nature of capital reductions, there's not a lot of meaning to this really, but our capital reductions, which have been significant, were done without changing our per student allowance. So I still do the same calculation I've always done, which results in about a $3 million allocation, but then we're given a figure to subtract from that. So what that means is to bring that money back wouldn't require new legislation. It would require no action. You know what I mean? So the budget that we have in now still shows a $3 million allocation, but then there's a big reduction that was given to us for that 1 year. So to reduce it again next year, we'll have to be given another figure. So I guess what I'm saying is it takes action to reduce it, not to bring it back.
Actually, on the part of the legislature.
Yeah. Lastly, student enrollment. We've lost enrollment for the last several years consecutively. Last year, 400 and some students. This year, it's closer to 60 or 65. That would be the best year in several years. So I don't really know how to interpret that, if we're at a plateau finally, or if we're just having a good year, but that's another thing to watch. And that's what I have. Do y'all have any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. Okay, legislative report. Oh, I'm sorry.
I move the governing board adopt the revised number 1, 2011-2012 budget for adjustments required by the Arizona Department of Education and budget balance carried forward and rear ladder budget carried forward in accordance with state statute.
Second. It's been moved to second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now it is time for the